It's no wonder that we have an extreme propensity to prefer the beginning in place of the ends.
Like my style? Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos.
Often romanticizing the journey, the story, the path that we are traveling. And what better for our imaginative minds to do than to revert back to that ambitious, curious, and interested version of ourselves that we once felt and resonated so strongly with. In many ways, that was the prompt, that was the initiator, that was what caused us in the first place to want to head off on these explorations and ventures. And we tend to glorify that, who we used to be, the people that we once, aspired to surround ourselves with, the heroes of our own story, when we had so much energy and so much passion, and when things were simple. Sure, we might not have been the strongest versions of ourselves. We might have even in some ways been more innocent and naive, of course. But there was a beauty in that. And for most, I think it's something that they treasured. Maybe not in the moment, but in retrospect especially. Now when it's so hard to find peace and things are so messy and complex, this memory of us, a more simple time, is something that gives us such a rush. And so you can empathize with those people or sympathize rather, with those people that tend to live in the past, because there's so much reason to. There's so much inspiration and positive feeling that was there that we in many ways had to leave behind as we grew up and became who we needed to be to survive and to exist in these environments that we found ourselves in. So we lost friends along the way. We experienced many traumatic moments. We stumbled and fell and were tossed around into these dark ravines. Even in some cases, we had to pull ourselves out completely alone. At the beginning, you're often not alone. You may have a group, a team, a vision, an idea that you cling to, that you feel drawn towards. Hope fills you, as it does all of us. Nobody wants the movie to end. Nobody wants the book to come to a close, in most cases. Now, when it's time for things to wrap up, then in many ways they will on their own accord, with or without your consent. But a lot of times it hurts, when you feel so attached to this story that you've been writing and that you've been a part of, to see it come to a close is painful in some ways. And you have developed as a character, you have shaped yourself into a protagonist, or maybe even an antagonist by the end of all things. And you may have even watched your own fall, you know, in a rather omniscient type of way. And maybe you don't quite feel like the good guy or the, you know, positive attributing voice that you once felt you were. And yeah, that's something that we probably each have to battle and, you know, come to terms with in our story. It's a long path. You can go in many directions, but not all the directions feel good. Not all of them bring you such joy and fill you with such, you know, wondrous elation. Serendipity is often something that is achieved towards the end. Peace is something that is found in many ways in hindsight. So being okay with these stories coming to a close is, in a way, essential to finding that sense of tranquility that you may have been looking for when the journey starts to fatigue you, as it will inevitably. You can't go on forever, you know? I mean, you could, if you had enough energy, if you had a big enough resolve and reserve to tap into, but we're only human, and that means we're limited. We have potential and we can try to reach it. We can shoot for the stars, but we're mortal beings, and that kind of implies that our stories aren't meant to last forever. So while the beginning is sweet, it's so sweet, the end perhaps is something that must be tasted to truly appreciate the palette of flavors that can be derived from life. These elements of that cinematic experience that we all live through. What better way to describe it than an array of tastes and flavors, and to experience all that is available, not just the good, not just the rich, but also the empty, the poor, the bitter, and everything in between, sour, you know? There's tastes, there's smells, there's sights. And that's just the beginning. So the end is the beginning in some ways, you know? Like that German quote, Das Ende ist der Anfang, and der Anfang ist das Ende. I learned that from Dark, a really good TV show. I'll probably title that for the video. It feels like a good way to capture all of this. So, to conclude, even at the ends, as you approach what feels like the close to a chapter, to a story, allow yourself to feel, perhaps more heavier emotions. Not in place of the sweet and light and happy ones, but, to characteristically contrast this journey that you have been on, and to really understand the depth, the variety, the diversity, which you can only capture when you open your mind and allow yourself to really feel profoundly. And then, in that moment, is when it returns to you. The beginning, the end, everything. It's all, one big loop. It's all one big circle that you pass through, and maybe it just means that it's time for the next story. There's nothing wrong with that. So don't forget that the end is the beginning and the beginning is the end. When you start this journey, when you head down the path, it means that there's bound to be a conclusion, a closing to all of it. But just because you've started doesn't mean that it has to end with such ferocity and, negativity, but rather these are just different aspects that you could feel because you are human and because you are open to, these various feelings and emotions. So that's all I got for today. This is a cool Japanese garden that I'm finding myself in, and I'm feeling inspired. It is quite cold and dark today, but the vibe is still great, and I feel like it's just the beginning. So with that being said, take care, and until the next one, peace.